years and years ago, an aunt of mine had been in a period where she had strayed away from church and everything, and she was coming back into church. So, as she was getting her spiritual life together, there was this man who came up to her and said to her, also in front of a lot of people, "God told me that you are going to be my wife." So, my aunt looked this man up and down and was like, "Cool story, bro, but God didn't tell me that." And no, she did not actually say "cool story, bro." That's just my interpretation. But here's my point in telling you this story, because my aunt went on to marry another man, a man who was truly her purpose partner, and a man who God showed to her was the right man for her. So often, especially as Christian women, we fall into these traps of wanting to be with a godly man so badly that sometimes we will look for signs that aren't actually signs, or we will fall prey to someone who presents himself as a godly man who looks like he's all about his faith when he's really not. So I've seen this more than once in churches growing up in a family with several ministers. I've definitely seen that whole situation of a man telling a woman, "Oh, well, God told me that the two of us were meant to be together," and she goes along with that even though she didn't receive that revelation. And you would think that if God means for two people to be together, that both of them would get that revelation, not just one of them. I've seen cases where a man tells a woman that and they end up being together, they end up getting married, and then it doesn't work out the way that she had hoped it would work out. I've also seen cases of, let's be real here, there are some women in church who are preacher chasers. There are women who believe that not only are they meant to be with a godly man, but they are meant to be with a man who is specifically in the pulpit, who is specifically in ministry. Hey, Michelle, I hope that you are having a great Monday and a great start to July. And because these women specifically want to be with that kind of man, they can be particularly vulnerable to falling prey to situations like this. Here's something that you need to keep in mind. Just because your pastor invites a man into the pulpit, that does not mean that he is a perfect man, that this man is husband material. It does not mean any of that. I've seen it growing up in church, and I'm sure you ladies have seen it as well, whether you see it in the news, whether you see it in your own churches. I'm sure you know of at least one story of a minister who has cheated on his wife, who has done something else that was not as holy as he was presenting himself to be. And I'm not saying that these men can't be forgiven. I'm not saying that there isn't grace for these men. But when you get into this belief thinking that just because a man is up on the pulpit, he also deserves to be up on a pedestal, you will end up falling prey to men who are not the purpose partners that God meant for you. You will end up in a world of heartbreak because you use that as your only judgment that this man was a good man. And again, I'm not even trying to slam men in this, because none of us are perfect. But you have to be able to use some discernment. You have to learn how to listen to what God is telling you. You have to learn how to meditate on the word. You have to learn how to trust your own intuition. And you have to really be able to evaluate the men that you are dating. Here's the thing, love. You are already a cherished woman. I don't help women. I don't work with women who are terrible and helpless, who have no hope for relationships. All of the women I meet, whether I work with them as clients or whether you follow me on social media and you say hi to me, all of the women that I meet are cherished women who are truly worthy of love. They oftentimes just don't realize their value, and that's my job to help them realize that so that they can attract that purpose partner. But because you are a cherished woman, in addition to the great men that you're going to attract, you are also going to attract some men that are not so great. And again, you have to be able to discern and be able to tell the difference. So it's not just a matter of men in church, who some really are wolves in sheep's clothing, but also in every other type of man that you may be trying to attract in your life. A man who always seems nice, who comes off as being ultra polite to everyone in the church, everyone on the job, everyone in whatever environment that you know him from. He may come off that way, but then you start to go out with him and you find out that he's really not as nice as he seems to be when the two of you are out in public. You may find that in private he has a very different personality. And if that's the case, you need to get out of that relationship, because people will show you who they are better than they can tell you. And if you start seeing signs that this person isn't in alignment with the public persona that they have, what you're seeing in private is the truth. You may be after a man who is ambitious and who is very career oriented and who is very wealthy. If that's the case, you do you, boo. But note this: just because a man has a certain job title, just because a man has a certain level of education, that does not mean that he's rich. Even if he's making a lot of money, he could also have a problem with saving it, with investing it, with putting some back for a rainy day. You could be dating a rich man who is completely, totally broke and who's going to end up making you broke as well. You say that you want a man who is highly educated, and he may have the degrees, but you guys saw the college admission scandal that happened a couple of months ago with children of celebrities getting into schools that they didn't qualify for. Even if a man really is smart, even if he did get into college, if you want someone who is truly intelligent, then, you could be dealing with someone who did what they needed to do to get through school, and then they forgot everything. And they're not interested in growing. They're not interested in keeping up with current events. They're not interested in reading new books, anything like that. You, one, have to be very clear on what it is that you want. You also have to make sure that you are using your discernment, that you are using your judgment to make sure that just because someone is presenting as what you want, to make sure that they actually are that way. You could meet a man, you say you want a great sense of humor. You could meet a man who is so funny. Every time you see him in a crowd of people, he's always making everyone in that crowd laugh. Then the two of you get in private and he can't take a joke. You make one little joke and he completely flies off the handle. Discernment is key. You have to learn how to watch out for red flags, because they will appear. Here's the thing. I know oftentimes when we go on first dates with people, you don't meet the actual person, you meet their representative. So yeah, someone can fool you in the beginning, but they can't keep fooling you over and over again. And if you're not careful, what will happen is, if you are so quick to want to jump into a relationship based off on one impression of a person, or based off one or two dates with a person, what will happen is you will get burned quickly. So many women come to me telling me that they have issues trusting men. And this is one of the main reasons why you have those trust issues, because you are not taking your time to properly vet men. You are unsure about what red flags to watch out for. You get your hopes up too quickly, and you are not learning how to listen to God's voice. You're not learning how to listen to wise counsel. And I do say wise counsel because some of you are listening to forever single friends. Some of you are listening to people who really don't mean you any good. But when you have someone who means well for you, someone who's also been there, someone who's done that, and they are telling you that this person is not who they seem to be, and you're not listening to that because you are too focused on he looks great on paper, so I want to just move this relationship forward. I think I want so badly for this to be the man for me that I'm going to try to make it work. This is how you end up getting burned. And this is why you end up with trust issues. This is why you end up dealing with a lot of toxicity that you're not sure how to heal. This is why you end up being jaded. And then not only is it a matter of you can't trust certain men, but you start to think all men are dogs, all men are cheaters, and you end up in a situation where you're going to make yourself forever single. Because if you don't believe that there are good men out there, you won't meet good men. What you focus on magnifies. So if you're constantly focusing on men who burned you in the past, you're constantly focusing on some man that you saw in the news, some man that you heard about in your church who was a dog, if you're constantly focusing on those examples, you are going to attract more and more of that into your life. When you start focusing on the good relationships that you see out there that are healthy, where the man and women love each other and they have a healthy, sustainable relationship, when you start focusing on the good men who are out there, who are doing their best, who want to have families, who want to provide for those families, who want to cherish their wife, when you start focusing on those things, then you attract those things into your life.